You know, what I've been thinking about recently is how unfair it is that all of the things that we know are bad for us are instantly gratifying and cheap to access, whereas the things that we know are good for us take time to see any results from, if we see them at all, really. For example, we don't tend to have a glass of wine of an evening and think to ourselves, well, over time this will improve my alcohol tolerance, that's why I'm doing it. And likewise, we tend to go to the gym thinking to ourselves that in 6 months or a year, I'll be stronger. Same with running, anything like that, we're thinking about what it will bring us in the future and not what it brings us immediately. It just seems a bit bloody unfair. In an evolutionary sense, the things that we find abundant, accessible and cheap now really weren't even 100 years ago. So as a result of that, we get a huge dopamine rush when we do have access to that. Our brains haven't adapted quickly enough to it. Conversely, the things that we have to work a bit harder for, so things like exercise, would have been an anathema to somebody 100 years ago. Their entire lives were exercise. It was such a tough existence. So as a result, the bad things were less abundant and the good things that we find difficult to adhere to now were just part and parcel of everyday life. It's just that our brains, our neurochemistry, haven't kept up with the rate of technology and industrial revolution that's happened, say, in the last 100 years or so. And whilst knowing that's all very interesting, it doesn't really help us very much to do anything about it. And as we're often finding at the moment, I think the answer lies in exploring the idea of comfort and discomfort. We live very, very comfortable lives at the minute, and I think some work in that area will actually mean that we can resist these things a little bit more easily. Let's take a look at this. So the modern world gives us extraordinary levels of comfort, and I think therein lies the problem, as we keep discovering at the minute. The more comfortable we get, the harder it is we find to do the right thing, in inverted commas, because doing the right thing was inbuilt in daily life. So let's build this idea of resilience and resistance through exploring our areas of comfort that we have in the world at the moment. Now, you've probably heard of Apollo, son of Zeus, god of archery, music, poetry, dance, truth, healing, prophecy, and knowledge. Pretty busy guy, right? And how about Heracles? That was Apollo's brother. The Romans called him Hercules, and he's the god of bravery, strength, and all heroes. Familiar names and familiar traits, I'm sure. But then there's his lesser known brother, Dionysus, god of alcohol, festivities, fertility, and of course, ritual madness. Also, the guy who invented wine. Dionysus and I were pretty good mates for years, and I had him on speed dial. Now, Dionysus, he's basically the modern day god of instant gratification, a party in human form. However, Heracles is the god of gym bros, and Apollo, let's be honest, he's the god of boring. All self-discipline and self-improvement, no fun. I mean, sure, truth and prophecy are great, but you know, the party is at Dionysus's, and you don't even need to bring a bottle because he invented it. How about the Hedonists and the Stoics then? Two sides of the same coin. Heracles and Apollo sit neatly at the head of Stoicism. Dionysus was the blueprint for Hedonism. And that's where all the fun is, isn't it? No one wants to unwind from a tough week at work by sitting in a stress position for 10 minutes and then having an ice bath. It's crack open the Malbec, mainline some Häagen-Dazs, but let's face it, when the world goes sideways, it's not the guys that have been at the gym you want to call on, it's the ones that have been at the gym. Picture this, a full-blown crisis unfolds, World War Z stuff. On one side you've got the Stoics, Apollo, Heracles, Marcus Aurelius, Viktor Frankl, Rich Roll, Tim Ferriss and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Discipline, resilience, strength, clarity of thought, pragmatic, built for the storm. On the other side you've got the Hedonists, Dionysus, Pete Doherty, Hunter S. Thompson, Oscar Wilde, Shane MacGowan, Lord Byron and James Hester version 2.0. Absolute legends, sure, but I wouldn't trust them to hold it together when the chips are down. They'd eat them all and put them all on lucky number 7. So, here's a thought. This is what I've arrived at. Our ability to stay stoic, to be a little more Apollonian, Herculean, to make the right choices might not lie in sheer willpower. I think it's more about how well we can endure discomfort. Think about it. Resisting that chocolate bar or glass of wine isn't really about resistance at all. It's about not even having the impulse to have it in the first place. James Clear says that habits have 4 steps. The cue, you have a hard day at work, a row with the kids, disagreement with your partner. Generally speaking, you feel like you're not achieving what you want in life. The craving, you want a glass of wine, bar of chocolate, tub of ice cream, or worse. The response, you eat it, drink it, or worse. The reward, you get a dopamine hit and a short-lived reprieve. But then there's the long-term fallout and you feel rubbish. You feel like you're back to not achieving what you want in life and you spiral and it all starts again. Avoiding the craving and response is really hard. That's the bit we're struggling with. But maybe we're trying to break the loop at the wrong point. What if we could avoid the cue in the first place? And more vitally, how? Okay, take someone that's used to the cold. A regular cold water swimmer, for example. They'd barely flinch at temperatures that would leave someone from a cosy, climate-controlled office shivering, whinging and distressed. Comfort shifts our baseline for comfort. If you come in from the cold, the warmth feels incredible, but someone that's been in that room all day, they'll barely even notice it. Michael Easter talks about this. More comfort doesn't equal more satisfaction, it just lowers our threshold for comfort. The more we cocoon ourselves in ease, the more fragile we become. Flip it around. The more we expose ourselves to discomfort, the more resilient we get. Take regular cold showers, for example. You might find that what once felt uncomfortable becomes more comfortable. Suddenly, a tough day at work doesn't even register as tough, and the thought of needing a glass of wine or a tub of ice cream, or worse, doesn't even cross your mind because you've not had a tough day at work, you've just had a day at work. You're less likely to reach your newly elevated stress threshold when it comes to family, friends, finances, and other things that might otherwise light our fuse. It's not about brute force willpower to resist the response to the cue. It's high cost energy wise and bound to fail. It's about not having the cue in the first place. In short, if we seek out controlled discomfort, it raises our threshold for any form of discomfort, controlled or unexpected discomfort included. And here's the kicker. I might have got hedonists, Dionysus and my previous self wrong. I thought we were pure pleasure seekers, but it's not just that. They're not just chasing pleasure, they're also avoiding pain. Avoiding pain and discomfort make your threshold for it lower. Think about physical health. Go for 3 runs a week and you don't even notice going up a set of stairs at work. Sit on the settee eating ice cream and binge watching Mrs. Brown's Boys, and you deserve everything karma has in store for you. Now think about mental health. Same principle. Stand outside barefoot in the cold whilst the dogs are doing their thing in the garden, and the presentation at work suddenly doesn't even register on the anxiety radar. Whether it's feeling the cold, being hungry, carrying some weights, or holding an awkward pose, here are some simple ideas to build into your life from time to time. The more regular, the better. The more often you question how you're going about things and why, the more you'll build in and look for small opportunities to experience discomfort or remove comfort or distractions. Travel to work under your own steam, whatever the weather. Stand outside barefoot or in minimal clothing in the cold. Sit in a deep squat for as long as you can. Intermittent fasting. Be hungry. Do a workout or household chores without any distractions like a podcast or music. Or one of my favourite things to do.
Get a tattoo.
You could subscribe to my channel and endure one of my videos in its entirety. Take a cold shower, ice bath, cold water swim. Sit in silence for 10 minutes. This isn't meditation. That's where you're supposed to not think. Feel free to think. Burying the things that are on our mind with distractions is the thing that we're trying to avoid here. Go to the shops and carry the shopping home by hand. Hold a plank for as long as you can. Carry a weighted pack around for a whole day. It doesn't have to be impressive, long-lasting, extremely painful, or even Instagrammable. It just has to be. Let's not pretend that musicians aren't notorious for their hedonism, the late nights, the parties, the wine-soaked creative chaos. It's all part of the mythology, isn't it? And well, truth be told, the reality. Me and Dionysus were like this. But here's the thing, if you stay in that world too long, the wheels fall off. And we see it time after time, unless you're Keith Richards.
Good turn of phrase.
So it seems you can't be Dionysus or hedonistic without your brain and body eventually packing up. And it's really difficult to stay disciplined and Apollonian. Being a human is really hard. Making the right choices is really hard. Resisting the urges and impulses of Dionysus is really hard. Between the devil on this shoulder and the angel on this one lies our own heads. And we have to try and make the choices. We all know that prevention is better than cure, right? But in this case, prevention is better than cue. Seek discomfort, build it into everyday life, and the cues will reduce. Things that bothered you don't even register anymore. Fewer triggers, and cues equal fewer cravings and responses. Does that make sense? Here are the 3 things I want to know from you in the comments below. 1, what's the most recent cue or trigger you experienced? 2, what is your go-to response? And 3, what little discomfort are you going to do tomorrow to help break the loop? I'll go first. Take a look. Okay, bye.